Welcome to the Simply Jenna podcast. This is Breaking the Stigma, a special mini-series. Join us as we interview different people and talk about their journey to wellness. If you have thought about getting support but were afraid, or are afraid of what others might think, this series is for you. Stay tuned for some really good stories. Welcome back to Breaking the Stigma, the mini-series. This is episode number 2 with Tyler.
Yes, welcome back. And our first episode was a huge hit with Matt. So we're hoping that this one will be just as exciting. And we do have this episode with Tyler where he's going to share with us about his journey to mental health wellness amidst his divorce.
Thank you for joining us, Tyler. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, you bet. So grew up here in Calgary, Alberta, 41. Went to school, the University of Calgary, did my kinesiology degrees and then did my education degree. Realized that's not what I was going to do and got into doing some sales and business development in the oil and gas industry. Done that for the last 16 years. It's been wonderful, been quite a ride to say the least.
No kidding.
Was unfortunately was laid off about this time last year. So yeah, it was went for almost a year without work, and fortunately found some contract sales here recently, which has been great. It's been nice to reconnect with a lot of people I know and get back into the industry and find the meaning on the work side. So that's been great.
Excellent. And so do you have a family?
Yeah, you bet. I sure do. Yeah, I got 2 wonderful boys, Austin, who's 10, and Ethan, who's almost 8. And I love them greatly. And their mom and I went through a divorce at the start of 2019. And then last year, we kind of made things official. And that's been quite a challenge, to say the least, as well. So, we're doing much better now. And, I think from that introduction, you can see why the counseling services has been very valuable to me.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of things do you like to do with your boys?
Yeah. So, the people that know me know that I like to be very actively involved in my boys' lives. This last year has been quite difficult with the hockey not going. So we've done a lot of tobogganing and just skating out at the outdoor rinks in the Bonus Lagoon and whatnot. Inside, play some board games, play some card games, and we enjoy watching some movies too. Very valuable. And hockey, the coaching hockey has been something that's always been very important to me to connect with the boys, and not just with the boys, but all the other kids within the community. You see how important team sports is, not just to them, but for the parents as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
So you're a busy guy.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's interesting. You go from being busy with work and coaching and everything to a very different, I guess, lifestyle in the last year or so. And so that's something that we've had to kind of navigate and make sense of. But I think generally doing pretty good.
Yeah. Do you think that that's changed your perspective on going into work now, since what you've experienced in the past year?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Like I say, I mean, I think everyone's had their challenges here in the last year or so, and just that general connectivity with the people that they know and people that they work with.
Yeah.
I haven't had that in a number of months, and then of course not having the coaching as well. It's really changed what my life looked like in the last year, and so navigating that has been a challenge. But I think generally we've done pretty well. So
good. So let's talk about when you did decide to seek support through counseling. How would you describe your general mental health state prior to seeking counseling?
Yeah, I mean, I believed it was actually pretty good. I think I'm a very positive person who, pretty grateful for the things that I have and and whatnot. And so I generally, thought things were quite good. I think what I also realized was, some of the challenges that I did face, probably didn't do it as effectively or deal with them as effectively as I could have. And, it's really interesting. I follow Jordan Peterson quite a bit and listen to a lot what he says. And, he has a talk about, I think it's like a 4-year-old book called There's No Such Thing as Dragons. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of explains, my situation and maybe others, where you kind of know there's an issue, but you don't really address it in a proper way, and how that can really grow and kind of take over whatnot. So, yeah.
So when you made the decision to seek support for your life and what you were going through, how did you go about doing that?
So I didn't actually start doing any counseling until after going through my divorce. Okay. Right at the beginning of the divorce, through some work benefits, I did a few sessions. And what's interesting is I actually, at that time, didn't really find it very helpful. And in retrospect, I don't actually think it was because it wasn't helpful. I just think I probably wasn't in a place myself to probably get the benefits that I needed out of it.
Yeah.
And so it was probably about half a year after, when I had a visit with my family doctor doing a physical. And I think he could recognize, the help that and support I needed. And so he referred me to another counselor. And I think that's where it really helped me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And thank you for speaking to that, because I think it's so important that, yes, there may be things happening for you in your life that you're recognizing that you're struggling, but timing truly is everything. Mm-hmm. And it's so important that we're in a place in our head, in a space where we're saying, okay, yeah, you know what, I do need support, because it's certainly possible to go see a counselor and not get anything out of it just because your head isn't in the right space. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that, Tyler.
Yeah, because you want to be sort of in an open and maybe almost vulnerable state to sort of be prepared to share your story and be open to the feedback that's going to be coming to you as well as you're sharing your story, right? So I think that's a really good point for sure. So given that you maybe had thought about counseling before, but then maybe didn't go down that path or weren't in a place to receive it, how did you then feel once you thought, okay, no, this is it. Like I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to get the help. What were your thoughts going into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, kind of deep down, I knew that it would be very helpful for me. So I was actually looking forward to it. I don't remember being nervous or anxious or intimidated. I was actually looking forward to what it could provide me. So yeah, no, I believe I went into it with, in the right state.
Okay, perfect. And so then what did your expectations look like? What did you think it was going to look like? Did you think you'd be walking in and laying down on a couch or?
Yeah, I really didn't have too high or many expectations. I just thought, let's see how it goes. Mm-hmm. And that was it. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so you went into your first session then. How did you feel after you walked out of that session?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't recall specifically just that first session, but I do recall thinking that, it was very conversational, just kind of telling my story. My counselor was listening. She did a really good job of just directing questions on what she needed to understand more and what she, where she wanted the story to go. But I do kind of feel like I left that session feeling comfortable feeling good because I felt like she connected and really understood where I was coming from. So, yeah.
And maybe that's a question for you too, Jenna, in terms of what advice would you give to people as they're going into their first sessions? Is there anything that they can do to prep themselves or to get themselves in the right headspace to have a conversation, or just come as they are?
I think, yeah, like for me, what I think of when I have that first session with clients is that I just really want you to feel like you can be yourself. And, you know, it's not necessary for you to prep with certain information because it's our job to guide you where you need to go. And so just come as you are. And there's probably people that are going to be nervous, people that are excited, people that are, you know, not sure. But really just come as you are and let us do, you know, the hard stuff in that first session.
Awesome. And so Tyler, so you had your first session. It was a good session. What did the sessions look like after that one? So was it a lot of you talking? Was it a lot of the counselor talking?
Yeah. I mean, subsequent sessions were really just me kind of telling my story as I went, explaining, you know, what was happening. And I think a lot of it was just understanding, you know, why, why things happened in the past the way they did, why I felt the way I did, and really ultimately giving you the tools to move forward, you know, in a way which were positive and, lead to a better and healthier future. So it's interesting because what I felt was when I was heard and understood by her, I had no problem understanding, you know, some of the challenges that I created within my situations as well, right? Because ultimately we want to get to a healthier and better place. And so we just want to understand, well, why was the past the way it was and how do I get to a better, healthier future? And you know, given tools and strategies and whatnot is, I mean, you can kind of see that daylight, and it's a really positive, motivating thing.
Absolutely. And so did you feel like you had sort of you felt right off the bat then that there was a good fit with that counselor that you were seeing? Like you felt comfortable, you felt safe in that room?
Yeah. I mean, I felt like I could share who I was. I didn't feel, you know, judged or didn't feel any negative emotion. I felt understood and you know, and to make sense of, because I think that's a part of the challenge with so many of us is we're in a situation we don't really understand. You know, we might be in a little bit of pain. We may not feel good about it. We just want to know, what do we need to do going forward? And so, I mean, that was one of the best parts of it is understanding why things happen the way they do, but also where do we need to go going forward to get to places that we want to get. So, it was actually really, really valuable.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Jenna, anything that you want to add in terms of what people can look for, like signs that it's a good fit for between the counselor and the person seeking help? Tyler touched on a few, but are there any others that you would say are a good indication that this is a good fit?
I think what Tyler captured was perfect. I think that sense of that you can just have a conversation about what's happening for you at that time in your life, and just be able to be in an environment where you don't feel judged, you feel safe, and it feels like you are just really just having a good conversation with a good friend. And, that sense of safety and no judgment is so valuable.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tyler, did you, when you were in your sessions with the counselor, did she share any like specific kind of strategies with you that you would maybe want to share with our listeners, or just was that part of your counseling journey at all?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a combination of learning some strategies from my counselor and then really just being curious myself about learning more and doing a lot of, call it research, or just, after the first session, she pointed me in the direction to do a little research and information gathering on my own, which, really I haven't stopped to this day. So I would say a couple things that were very valuable for me were really understanding how to express and communicate your needs within a relationship, but also about boundaries as well.
Right.
I think in hindsight, certainly within my marriage, that was probably one thing that neither of us did very well, is being able to express our needs and our boundaries and do a good job with that. And then I guess on top of that, or furthermore, just learning about the Gottmans and talking about the four horses of the apocalypse, and something I've learned, I guess, just recently, and understanding how valuable it is to have, healthy communication,
right?
Not having the criticism and the contempt, and, avoiding defensiveness and stonewalling. Like it's so important to really understand those tools. And I mean, ultimately it's a practice and you got to implement them. But when you don't understand that ahead of time, you're stuck, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'd say those were probably the two things that were really valuable for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jenna, do you want to share with our listeners about, Tyler just touched on the surface there of Gottman's, what is it, the four horsemen?
Yeah, the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Yes.
So that's definitely a whole nother episode of information. But I think what I would like to speak to with what Tyler was saying is that what's beautiful about the therapeutic relationship and establishing that understanding of being heard and feeling validated is that it's really good practice for what you translate into the outside world, outside of that therapeutic environment, right?
Good point. Yeah.
So I think people that are maybe struggling in their relationships, it's a good idea to reach out and get that support, because you get that practice with your counselor in that environment, and learning how to create effective communication where you do feel validated and heard, and learn what that feels like, and then practice that outside of that office environment. So I think, today we're talking specifically about, struggles in relationships. So I love that the therapeutic relationship is about that. And it really helps people see what healthy communication can do, and the revelations it can bring to you in your life, both in your romantic relationships, your friendships, your workplace environment. So there's so many uses for it, and it can be so valuable, just that small piece. But the four horsemen of the apocalypse will be tackled at some point. Okay. It's a big one.
Sounds good. And thank you, Tyler, for bringing that up, because it's a good topic for us to cover. Okay. So, are you still in a place where you are seeking support, or have you discontinued for now? Or if you are, then how did you make that decision about continuing it, or how did you make the decision about discontinuing it?
Yeah. So right now, I haven't been in a little while. I think I have a pretty good idea of when I'm kind of feeling stuck or need that support. So fortunately, I'm feeling pretty good right now, and I'm also getting that support, or a different kind of support, elsewhere, from some friends and family. My as we've talked about, my sister has been a wonderful supporter of myself, and so I'd like to thank her for everything. We've worn out a number of pairs of running shoes, discussing things and going over things. So that's been fantastic. But I will say too that after my ex and I finally had our divorce finalized, we actually did some counseling, the two of us, with my counselor. Yeah. I think we did maybe 3 or 4 sessions, and that was really good too, because we recognize we want what's best for the boys,
Of course.
but we needed to figure out how we can be as good a co-parents as we can going forward.
Yeah.
Right.
And the divorce process is challenging to say the least.
Yes.
And so I think it just took us some time to get to the point of getting to that place where we are able to do that. And yeah, it's been very valuable and I think she would agree for getting to that place of co-parenting.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great that you're able to sort of see the need within yourself and then also see that there maybe is a need there within your relationship too, and considering how your relationship has changed with your ex, right? So that's fantastic. So you just said a second ago that you're feeling pretty good now. So how would you describe your sort of general mental health state now that you've had that opportunity to go through your counseling journey? Has it changed, gotten better?
Yeah, I believe that I'm in a much better place and feeling, really feeling very optimistic and positive about going forward in the future in many different regards. Certainly it helped to find work again. There was a lot of challenges in the last 2 years, obviously.
Yeah.
I think if you look at, what the top stressors are for people in their lives, I think I had 5 of 6 of them here in the last couple of years. So
No kidding.
it's been an interesting ride to say the least. But no, I feel really good, and it's made me, like I say, do a lot of research and really get interested in this whole space. And ultimately, want the best for my boys. I want them to have the tools and skills and the abilities to do the things that maybe I didn't learn until just recently. And, I think there's many different opportunities within the community, whether that's within team sports, their team sports, or at school, or just, hanging out with their friends. It would be pretty cool to see these younger kids understand, some of these things that really they're not learning otherwise. And so for me, it's kind of a passion or something that's valuable to me to try to help not just my boys, but maybe many other kids out there to gain this insight at an earlier age.
Yeah, that's perfect. And we've talked about sort of off recording.
Yeah.
The three of us have chatted in the past about how there's this misconception that seeking counseling or seeking support should happen only when you're facing a challenge. And we're hoping that in having these conversations, we can challenge that misconception and say that it's worthwhile to seek out support even when things are good too. And like you're saying, Tyler, just to sort of build that foundation of what healthy relationships look like, what healthy communication looks like. Those are all really important lessons that we can learn sort of before we get to the point of needing help. So thank you for speaking to that.
And sorry, I was going to cut in because I just want to point out, if you think about what your life is like when things are chaotic, it's so hard to internalize things. And so we, I think as a default, we do wait till things are chaotic to get support from the counseling world. And I just it's so important for people to realize and to think about how much more receptive you are and how much easier it is to internalize concepts or understandings when you're doing well.
Right.
So therefore, counseling when you're doing well is so beneficial. And it's if anything, it's probably the best time to get counseling, because you're much better able to put time and investment into what you're learning about and being able to see what you're learning about in the session in the outside world, right? And just really transferring those lessons outside that therapeutic environment.
And it goes back to when we started the episode talking about being in the right headspace, right?
Yes.
Like that's exactly what we're talking about now is you're more likely to be in the right headspace when things are going well as opposed to when things are not going so well.
And yes, there is such a thing as crisis counseling, and for sure,
that's right.
We can do crisis counseling, and we can get you in a headspace where you're able to be stable and to manage what's going on for you. But just because things are well, there's always room for making things just that much better.
So speaking of sort of this I guess what we're talking about around, the stigma of getting help. Tyler, why do you think there is a stigma with either seeking out or actually following through and getting the mental health support?
Yeah, I mean, I believe the stigma is somewhat getting lifted, and certainly after a year that we've all experienced with COVID. And I mean, it's interesting, COVID hits, and it's not like we're all starting from a healthy, clean slate anyways. Like, we have our struggles to start with, and then things just, really, for what I learned, it's about, change in your life, and people don't do well with a lot of change. And so everyone's experienced a lot of change, in their world. And so that's stressful. It's trying to make sense of it. And so I don't know if there's necessarily as much of a stigma now. I think there still is. But I think a big part of it, like you were talking, Nikki, is realizing that, that normal maintenance or not waiting for things to be kind of broken down. We're such a reactive kind of nature, where, being proactive is way more valuable if you can do it. And so, even if things are going well at a certain time, to know that, you're doing okay, but hey, maybe there's some new skills or some new tools that you can, adopt and put into practice to make things even healthier and better, right? Like, we're always growing, we're always learning. So why wait until things get really chaotic and difficult to figure out what you need, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so then, in thinking about this whole stigma piece, and you mentioned that we're definitely on the track for things changing. There is a change in society, I think, where it's becoming more supported than it ever has been. But we know that this stigma still exists, and it's specifically there for men. And why do you think it's there for men?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like,
from your perspective.
From my perspective, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. Really, at the end of the day, we're kind of people that like to or need to fit in. And I think we don't want to be ungrateful that that's how we are. It's important to fit in. It's important to feel needed and connected. But if we're to look at how we do that, sometimes it's in unhealthy ways. And I mean, Brene Brown talks about, the challenges that women face versus men. And so for men, I think she mentions about, just not being weak and,
right.
And, in hindsight, maybe that's something that was a challenge for myself. But, I do think that, everyone kind of has their challenges and their struggles. I know people that I've talked to recently, they're interested in my story. They're interested in what's happening because, at the end of the day, you can ignore as much as you want, but when you're struggling and when you're in some pain and suffering, you just can't ignore that, right? Like Jordan Peterson talks about how, you can't ignore, the pain that you're in. And so, I think men generally, have been just kind of suppress things, don't talk about things. But I'm optimistic. I think there's more men out there, there's more guys out there that realize how important getting that support is. And, again, this goes back to my boys and their mental health. And I would love nothing more for them and their peers, boys and girls, everybody to, for it to be normal to manage their mental health and talk about things and have difficult conversations and have the tools and skills to be able to recognize what they need and where to go. Right. So, I mean, change, I just think change within human nature, it doesn't happen right away. It takes time. And I think we're making progress. We're getting better. And I think each generation recognizes where we need to get to. And so I'm actually pretty optimistic that, my 10 and almost 8-year-old, when they're, young adults, I feel like they're going to be in a place that's supported by their peers. And so that's our job to get them there.
Yeah. I have to say, Tyler, I love your optimism.
Me too.
I so appreciate it. You're so positive and so optimistic, and it's just fantastic. It's a great energy to be around. So thank you for that.
You bet.
And it's because of stories like what Tyler is sharing that we can help to just, create more optimism and more hope for, our children and our children's children. And, by Tyler taking, the initiative to share this, that's how we help to establish this environment that it's okay to get support.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, I'm a pretty positive person by nature, and, some of the challenges I've gone through in the last couple of years, I was not positive. I was very challenged in many regards and not feeling optimistic.
Yeah.
And, at the same time too, through this journey, again, I don't want to be ungrateful that there's so much that I've learned, so that coming out of this and being in a better place myself, you can help the people around you, right? And so whether that's coaching hockey or whatever that looks like, there's been a lot learned and a lot that we can help others with. So that's why I'm pretty optimistic. So
awesome. Okay, so we're down to our last question, and this is a tough one. So Tyler, I'll ask it to you first, and then Jen, I'll come to you after, because I like to have your opinion on this question. We've asked it before, but I think it's a good one. So if you could give one piece of advice to our listeners about mental health, what would you say?
Can I give 3?
Yes. Give 4.
Yeah. So I guess the first piece is, like, I really believe everyone needs at least one person in their life that can help them, move forward in a positive way. And I think part of the struggle or the reality with many people is they have friends, they've got family that support them, and support, don't get me wrong, support is so important. But they don't want to see their friends or their family hurt, and they don't know what to do. So they want to support, but they're not actually giving good advice. They're not really helping them with what they need to do going forward. That's because, maybe there's things that they need to understand that are a little bit painful or don't feel good to understand that. So whether that's a counselor or, other means, I think it's important to have somebody who can help you really understand what you need to do going forward.
Fair enough.
And then we've talked about it as well. Don't wait till there's the breaking point.
Right.
Like,
yes. Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's way better to start working on things and understanding what you need to do sooner than later. Again, even if you feel you're in a good place, awesome. Like that's great. Great to understand and know. And there's probably more you can learn and more tools you can add to your toolbox going forward. Fantastic. And then I think just the last point is that, like, and maybe this is a bit of a reason why, people don't get the support is they probably realize, how much work it ultimately is. Right. I mean, I think you're not going to go to 1 or 2 sessions and have it all figured out and then you're all good, right? It really is a process and a practice of knowing what you should be doing, because it's challenging. Social, pressures will make it hard, but to know what you need to do and to practice it and keep with it to get better at it. It's like anything, right? I mean, if you haven't been exercising or you haven't been running and then you want to go run a marathon, well, you know what, you have to start small and you have to be consistent with it, right? And if you try to overdo it, it's you're gonna get hurt, and then you're just gonna stop doing it, right? So it's like anything done well is done consistently and having a plan. So I think those are kind of three of the main things that I would say.
Fantastic. Those are good ones. I like them. Jenna?
Those are really good.
Good luck following that up.
Yeah, right? Oh my goodness. I really want to echo what Tyler said, and I think that's been a running theme throughout this episode, which is so important, is really just capturing that, yes, things can be good, and, life is good, and maybe put some effort into figuring out why it's good. What are you doing that's working, and understanding why it's working so that you can use it in the future, maybe when things get tough.
Right.
So I think, I really want to highlight that. And like Tyler said, I agree that it is a process, and whether you're 1 session, 10 sessions, 25 sessions, at the end of the day, it's really about, getting through that first session and seeing the benefit of it. And really, if you can just commit to doing that first session, you will see, how it can change your life.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Tyler, for joining us and for being willing to share your story and being honest about your struggles. Mm-hmm. We really appreciate it. And like I said before, and I genuinely meant it, I really do appreciate your optimism. And I hope that our listeners can feel that when they're listening to this episode. So thank you again. We really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. Thanks, Jenna, for having me here. It was a pleasure.
As always, we would like to end this episode with a quote. This one is from Viktor Frankl. What is to give light must endure burning. Thank you for listening to this episode. I wanted to share some important information before we let you go. While this podcast will give you strategies to use in your life, it is certainly not a replacement for attending therapy or seeking your own support. There will always be limits to what we can do on our own when it comes to mental health. And while we can give you tools and strategies, we know that they will not always work for everyone. There is value in telling your story and being heard. If you have tried the strategies we discussed and you're still feeling stuck, please reach out to us at Simply Counseling Services. Visit our website at www.simplycounselingservices.com for the services we offer and to learn about the other services that are free. You can also submit your topic ideas for this podcast on this website as well. Thank you again for joining us, and we are looking forward to our next time together. Take care of yourself.